to another episode of the Algorithm Podcast. I am your host, Carl, joined by my host,
Kerrigan.
Yeah, and it's been a long time, and for a good reason. Well, not a good
Yeah.
reason, but bad reason.
Well, we were here not too long ago, but
Yeah, pretty. We recorded an entire episode with no video or audio.
yeah,
Yeah, the episode we recorded was Madeline McCann.
which was actually I felt pretty good about that
It was a
episode.
great episode. We'll have to revisit it.
Yeah.
We decided to just scratch it because I didn't want to redo that episode.
Yeah.
We'll come back to Madeline McCann. I'm sure people want to hear about that one. Today's episode is about the infamous South Carolina Murdaugh family.
Yeah.
If I don't know if anybody has seen their Murdaugh, and it looks like Murdaugh.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people know it as Murdaugh, but it's Murdaugh, the murder series on Netflix.
Which I don't think I watched the Netflix series. I feel like
Really?
everything that I picked up was just like podcasts.
Online.
Yeah. Which they
You
did
need
a
to
really good
watch
job
the
of covering it.
Netflix series.
I've-
It's done so well.
Maybe I did.
It's done so well. It really like kind of dives into like the people that were there
Mhm.
as far as the death of Mallory, the kids that were there that night. It dives into that and just the story behind that. You need to watch that if you didn't.
No, I feel like I did. And then I followed up with the podcast stuff.
Well, we've done this episode already.
Yeah.
You weren't here at the
Mm-mm.
time. I think this was right before you started.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want a more polished version of this episode because there's really a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason why we're doing this episode is because you were kind of already studied for this episode. You want to talk about that for a second?
What family was I supposed to be, or what was I supposed to be doing?
The Delphi murders.
Okay, yeah. So when I was supposed to be studying for the Delphi case and the Delphi murders, I, for some reason, was like, oh, the Murdaughs, like, obviously. So I studied for like 5 or 6 days, like in depth. Like I was,
Until about the day before we did
Yeah,
Delphi.
and then you texted and was like, all right, Delphi. And I was like, oh, what?
So you had to literally study
Yeah.
Delphi,
Yeah,
the entire thing,
yeah.
in a day and a half. So if you
Yeah.
go back and rewatch that new Delphi episode, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I
Kinda
felt
long for the
so silly. I texted Erica and I was like,
What do I do?
I really messed up.
Yeah,
I
you
felt
did a
so
good
silly,
job, though. I
but
mean, you kind of helped.
It was
carry
helpful having Danielle here too. 'Cause
She was very, very, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
There were people in our comments, which that episode's done really well. There were people in our comments that were really pleasantly surprised with her
She
and
was
the
awesome.
in-depth that she went through.
Yep.
Okay, before we get into the Murdaughs, be sure to subscribe and like the YouTube, comment,
Yeah.
tell us what you think about this episode or past episodes,
Yeah.
what we could do better, whatever. Next time we'll be on here, we're going to be talking about the Zodiac Killer, so that's something to look forward to too. That's a very, very highly touted one that
I'm
you have
excited
no
about that
idea
one.
about.
Mm-mm.
I love doing the ones that are so mega popular that you have no clue about,
Yeah.
because it's like me being a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh, did you know this? Did you know
Yeah.
this? Did you know this?
Just wait until you find this
Wait
out.
until you find this out.
Yep.
What episode did we do where I was like, I spoiled it so bad for you.
Oh, she was up in the water tower tank.
Oh, Elisa Lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoiled it
Yeah.
for you. I didn't want to, I shouldn't have spoiled that.
That one was real. I loved that one. Studying for that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Elisa Lamb is a really good one. Like
Well-
murder mystery.
Yeah. Go back and watch it if you haven't. I really enjoyed that episode.
Okay, let's get into the Murdaughs. Okay, the Murdaugh family is an American family from the Low Country region of South Carolina. 3 generations named Randolph Murdaugh served consecutively as a circuit solicitor, which is the elected prosecuting attorney, for the state's 14th Judicial District between 1920 and 2006.
Yeah. That's a
long
time to have
time.
somebody with that name.
That much power,
Yeah.
that much name, in that small of a community.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a community where everybody knows everybody. We'll get to it in a little bit, but what the death of Mallory Beach, cops come up on the scene. Can't remember the kid's name. I'll get into that in a little bit. And he literally goes, "Do you know who Alex Murdaugh is?"
Mm-hmm.
And the cops go, "Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that name." Well,
Yep.
that's his son.
Mm.
Like that kind of power.
Yeah.
The family's prominence led locals to call the 5-county district Murdaugh Country. In addition to the legal positions, Randolph Murdaugh Sr. established the Murdaugh family law firm, now called the Parker Law Group, which specializes in personal injury litigation. A fourth
Interesting.
generation son, affluent lawyer Richard Alec Murdaugh, secretly led a life of crime that included acts of fraud, corruption, embezzlement, theft, drug offenses, spanning decades and involving dozens of victims, many of whom were disadvantaged. This dude is a piece of fucking work.
Yeah.
Piece of work.
Yeah.
The crimes culminated in 2021 when Alec Murdaugh murdered his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, using multiple guns at close range. We'll get into this too. They owned a like a gun range,
Yeah.
like a gun range or like a hunting.
Yeah, like on the property.
And Maggie and Paul were shot with two different guns.
Mhm.
One of them were proven to be one of
On-
on like their property.
Yep.
Murdaugh's trial ended with his conviction and sentencing to 2 consecutive life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole. The case captured national attention for many years and generated extensive media coverage, films, and books.
Yeah.
Also generated the #1 Netflix show when it was released.
Yeah, I do remember it being it was like a huge deal because of all of the things that came from the murders and then everything that came before that hadn't really been talked about. It was just kind of like grazed over. To go back and see the corruption in Alex's life that spans years before was crazy.
Well, it just shows like where else is this happening at?
Yeah.
Because this is just like one small,
Right.
zoomed. Like I guarantee you, there's families and shit like this everywhere.
Everywhere.
In these kind of small things.
Oh, yeah. The Murdaughs.
Yep.
Murdaughs. The Murdaughs family hunting estate near
Islandton,
situated on the
Salcahatchee. It's Salcahatchee.
Salcahatchee River,
Yeah.
was formerly called Moselle after the conviction of Alex Murdaugh for the
Nope,
murders.
Alec.
Alex
It's
Murdaugh
Alec Murdaugh. We're going to do that the entire
Oh.
episode.
For the murders of his wife and son, which took place on the estate. The 1,770-acre property was rebranded Cross Swamp Farm and listed for sale. It sold for $3.9 million to the buyers who wanted the land for hunting and farming. The new owners were not interested in the house and partitioned the building and about 21 surrounding acres into a separate property and resold it in 2024 for $1 million, well below market value. The buyer was a locally based home restoration professional who quickly made significant changes to the look and layout of the house. I did not know that.
Gigantic house sold for $1 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
Beautiful house.
to buy the land for hunting and farming for $3.9 million. Woo.
Yeah. Okay, well, now we're going to talk about when things start to get a little fucky.
Yeah.
With the Murdaughs in their, well, their entire family history is already fucky anyways, but
Yeah.
this is when the legal things started to happen and like the snowball effect started to happen and the weight of the world started falling on Alec and the family. So we're going to talk about the murder of Stephen Smith. Okay. Do you know much about this?
Yes, I know a little bit about it. I guess I wouldn't say that I know a whole lot.
Okay.
But.
On July 8th, 2015, Stephen Smith, a 19-year-old nursing student at Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College, was found dead from blunt force trauma on a rural road in Hampton County, approximately 15 miles from the Murdaugh family's Moselle estate. The case was initially ruled a hit and run, with no suspects arrested. Smith was openly gay and a high school classmate of Alex's oldest son, Buster. Witnesses interviewed as a part of the original investigation repeatedly implicated Buster as having been involved in a relationship with Smith, but the case went cold.
Yes, I do remember him being like openly gay, and that was like a no-no for Alec and his son Buster, who may have been in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that.
And the thing is well, this is 2015, so social media and all of this was around. Cell phones, all this was around. Kids talk in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Like everybody knows everything, especially like when you have social media and all these these apps and things like this.
Yeah.
How they didn't find anything and how this story was supposedly made up
beyond me.
is beyond me.
And the fact that I don't feel like anything was ever really cleared up. They were like, oh, it could be
No,
this or it could be that. We think it was this, so
like we're gonna get into more of how corrupt they are as far as like involvement in the police force, but
Yeah.
it's just like the police force swept it under the rug.
which is so sad.
Yep. According to the Greenville News, rumors hitting at a cover-up and the possible involvement of one or more members of the Murdaugh family began circulating around the Hampton County area soon after Smith's death. According to the Beaufort County Island Packet, the case reeked of insider interference.
Yes.
In June of 2021, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division reopened the investigation into Smith's death based on evidence found while investigating the deaths of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh.
Mm.
On March 22nd, 2023, SLED announced Smith's death was a murder and not a hit and run accident.
Mm.
So this is 8 years
Yeah.
after it happened. No charges or indictments have been issued relating to Smith's killing as of January 2025. Buster released a statement to the press denying his involvement, in which he said that he was at the family beach house in Edisto Beach with his mother and brother when Smith was killed, and that these baseless rumors of my involvement with Stephen and his death are false.
Okay. I guess I heard that they had opened it back up, but I didn't know that they had changed it from a hit and run to a murder.
Yeah, when all of this stuff happened with Maggie and Paul, it caused them to like, okay, so maybe we should really take a look at the Stephen Smith
Yeah.
case.
Because that was like kind of where it all started was with him, right?
Mhm. And then Gloria Satterfield. Yep.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into next.
All right. The death of Gloria Satterfield. On February 2nd, 2018, the Murdaugh's longtime housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, suffered a severe head injury when she allegedly tripped by one of the Murdaugh's dogs and fell down the front steps of the family home on the Moselle estate.
Bullshit alert.
Yeah. Red flags
Yeah,
immediately.
bullshit alert.
What? No.
So we'll get in. I don't know if this is going to get into it. It won't. I'm already looking ahead. The relationship that Gloria had with Paul. Gloria, so I don't know if you know this.
Okay.
Gloria, so Maggie favored Buster heavily,
Okay.
like heavily favored Buster. Gloria, like she showed Buster so much attention, and I
Yeah.
think Paul envied it. Gloria was kind of like a mother figure
Okay.
for
Yes.
Paul.
Yes, I did hear that she wasn't just she was more than just a housekeeper.
Yeah.
She like
She was like a highly touted mother figure for Paul.
yeah. Okay.
And rumors and a lot of people that were in the know say that Maggie kind of resented that, like did not like that. And that was her
Okay.
motive.
No, I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that was her motive
Wow.
of the involvement in the death of her.
Okay. All right. She died in a hospital on February 26, 2018, of complications related to the fall, including a stroke. The incident
The incident.
Yep, the incident had been reported as a trip and fall accident, but no coroner was notified, no autopsy was performed, and the death certificate
Incongruously.
incongruously attributed to the death to natural causes.
Quote unquote natural
Yes.
causes.
Mm-hmm. A coroner testified that describing her death on the death certificate as natural was improper. Satterfield's two sons were awarded a $4.3 million insurance policy payout from the Murdaugh's insurer for her accident and or natural death. But by 2021, they had not received any money.
This shit is insane.
So twisted and sad. According to the sources, Alex Murdaugh, banker Chad Westendorf, and attorney Corey Fleming conspired to steal the payout by diverting the money to Alex's bank account, then not notifying the Satterfields that the payout had occurred. The Satterfields, represented by malpractice attorney Eric Bland, were ultimately able to recover more than $6.5 million during subsequent lawsuits.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I didn't really know that, but Alec convinced Satterfield's sons to sue him
Right.
for the money so they can get the money. And he put Corey Fleming in charge of getting their money
Right.
for them. And
Right.
Corey Fleming convinced the judge to get them it was like $600,000 or something like that. And before, like it was like a prepayment to the
Right.
settlement.
Right.
So he got the $600,000, and then Corey Fleming convinced them to go through Chad Westendorf to handle the money. Chad Westendorf then put that money in Alex. It was like an account to pay out victims' lawsuits.
Yes.
But it was an actual bank account that he
Yeah.
created to launder money.
Does it say the name of that anywhere?
It's like Forge.
Yeah,
Alex Murdaugh Forge.
Yeah, because it was
Like-
supposed to like represent a business.
Yes, it was like an actual business bank account.
Oh my god.
But it was money. It was a bank account that he used
Yeah.
to launder his money that he was
Disgusting.
stealing from clients and the law firm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is some okay.
Wild next level shit.
So, yes, and that's this is a really big, keep it in mind point that we just hit on.
Yeah.
Okay. On September 15th, 2021, authorities announced that they opened a criminal investigation into Gloria Satterfield's death. In June of 2022, authorities received permission to exhume her body to continue investigating her death. In August of 2023, Corey Fleming pleaded guilty to 23 charges, including breach of trust with fraudulent intent and money laundering, and was subsequently sentenced to 13 years, 10 months, in prison and disbarred. On November 28th, 2023, Murdaugh pleaded guilty to embezzling the insurance money and was sentenced to 27 years in prison for this and other financial crimes.
27 years for just this.
Yeah.
Just this. We're not talking about the murders or anything else.
Just
this. The shady shit that he was doing with
Yeah.
people's money. These kids' fucking mom died, dude.
yeah, and he
On your property.
Yeah.
And everybody knows. I mean, I hate speculating, but everybody knows your wife did it.
yeah,
Like, you're the one that's literally. He wasn't even there.
yeah,
And he's saying, "Oh well, she tripped on our dog."
yeah. The dog got under her foot. And
Which we'll get into the death of Mallory Beach. How when something bad happens like this, all of the Murdaughs come in and saying, "Well, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened,
Yeah.
this happened. And this is what happened."
Mm.
Like,
insane,
Yeah.
absolutely insane. The whole family,
shady.
something's going on with the whole family.
Yep.
This says Chad Westendorf was not indicted and was dropped from the subsequent lawsuits, but his bank CEO was fired.
That means he was telling on people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was telling on people.
Yeah.
If you don't get indicted for that, you were telling on people.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to talk about the death of Mallory Beach. This was the very huge.
Huge.
This was like the synopsis of the Murdaugh family murders season 1,
Yeah.
and then season 2 came out and covered everything else.
Okay, I did watch it. Yeah, that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, because the entire first season was the events that surrounded
Yes.
this. Paul,
Yeah.
the 3 M's, Morgan, Mallory, and what's the other girl's name? Morgan, Mallory, and
Don't count on me. I do not remember.
Morgan, Mallory, Maddie, maybe Maddie. It was the 3 girls, like they're the 3 best friends. Okay. At approximately 2:17 a.m. on February 24th, 2019, Paul Terry Murdaugh crashed his family boat into the Archers Creek Bridge in Beaufort, South Carolina. On board the boat at the time of the accident were Mallory Beach and several other teenagers. Beach was killed in the accident, and Murdaugh was charged with 3 felony counts of boating under the influence, including causing the death of Mallory Beach and seriously injuring 2 other passengers. Mallory Madison Beach was born to Philip Harley and Renee Searson Beach on April 18th, 1999. These kids were young.
Yeah.
In Walterboro, South Carolina. She was a Wade Hampton High School graduate. At the time of her death, the 19-year-old was attending college and working at a clothing store.
Awful. I think the whole story of how this all unfolded is just like so sad.
Watching the video for like last hour alive,
Ugh.
like when they're walking on that boardwalk, sucks.
Awful.
Yeah. Paul Murdaugh purchased alcohol in the hours before the accident at a convenience store in Ridgeland, South Carolina, using his brother's ID.
Also a pretty big, remember
They
this.
don't even fucking look alike.
No.
One's a ginger, one's not.
Not at all. And
Like-
you can tell in their face. I think that Buster looks like Alec and Paul looks like Maggie.
Yeah.
And so like the way that their face is shaped does not even remotely look the same to me.
Yeah. 3 couples, including Beach and her boyfriend, and Murdaugh and his girlfriend Morgan Doherty, met at Murdaugh's grandfather's Chichisi River House, and I probably butchered that name.
Chichesi.
Yeah. And boarded a center console boat to travel to an oyster roast. Paul was fucking
Gone.
hammered.
I better talk about
So he had like he was so far gone. They said when he would get so drunk, he would have like a split personality.
Yeah.
Called Timmy.
Yeah.
And like it would be one of those domestic abuse. I'm like a narcissist in control of everything.
Yeah.
Like very edgy type douchebag.
Yeah. He kept saying like, "This is my boat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drive."
Calling his
boat.
girlfriend a fucking bitch.
Yeah, like
smacking her and
dogging on his friends too.
Gosh.
Gross.
At 1 a.m. during the return trip, they stopped at a dockside bar in Beaufort where Murdaugh and another passenger, Connor Cook, drank shots. Connor's very important in this too. Murdaugh began behaving erratically, and while other passengers asked him to allow someone else to drive the boat, he refused. God, man. It's got to eat Connor and I think Anthony alive.
Yeah.
By just not taking control.
Just not letting him do control. Oof.
Murdaugh reportedly shoved, spit on, and slapped his then-girlfriend just prior to the crash. At 2:17 a.m., the boat hit a piling on the bridge to Paris Island. Yeah, he was driving erratically in circles, erratically. And at one point, Connor tried to take control of the boat and then slipped and fell or something like that. And then I think Anthony had grabbed Mallory and was holding her at the bottom of the boat tight. And then Anthony states that all of a sudden when he was holding her tight, they crashed and they all just...
Yeah, went everywhere.
Yeah, like popcorn.
Which is insane to think, like, they were literal human beings and they scattered.
Like, you hit that shit hard.
Hard.
Yeah. And I think they showed, like, a picture of how it hit. Like, it hit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awful. The passengers were transported to a nearby hospital except for Beach, who could not be found after the crash, and Beach's boyfriend, Anthony Cook, who insisted on staying behind to wait for news about Beach. Investigators and volunteers spent 8 days searching for Beach, according to CBS News. On March 3rd, 2019, 2 volunteers found her body about 5 miles down the river from the scene of the crash.
Yeah, Anthony is the one that was asking the cops if he knew who Alex Murdaugh is.
Yeah.
And come to find out later on that 3 of the cops that were on the scene had affiliations with Alex.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
That small town shit just gets me sometimes. Because in these cases, those small town connections can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, there was a cop that was specifically assigned to finding out who was the driver of the boat. And Paul goes on to state that what does it matter who was driving the boat? It's not going to bring Mallory back.
Yeah.
What a heartless fucking thing to say.
Insane.
What a heartless fuck. And there's audio. Well, there's video, but it doesn't show the video of Paul. But there's audio of Anthony talking to Paul saying, "What are you smiling for?" Like, after the accident, Paul's just sitting there smiling on his face. "What are you smiling for? My girlfriend's gone."
Disgusting.
Because he knows, Paul knows, even though he was drunk at the time, he knows nothing's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Well, at least
My
in his
daddy's
head.
got it.
At least in his head, nothing was going to happen to him.
Awful. Several of the teens were injured and required surgery. Paul Murdaugh was uncooperative with the medical staff. Several hours after the crash, his blood alcohol content was 0.24, 3 times over the legal limit.
Do you know how much that is?
That's a lot.
Do you know how much that is?
That's so much.
Like, that's a fuck ton.
And that was hours after the crash.
Yeah.
And he was still 3 times over the legal limit.
And you got to think, when a crash like that happens, at some point, your sobriety comes down a little bit.
Yeah, you sober up a tink.
Yeah, and he's still 3 times the legal limit.
Wow. That shocked me.
Yeah, he was gone. They said he was gone.
Paul claimed that one of the other teens, Connor Cook, had been driving the boat. However, evidence from his injuries proved that Connor Cook was a passenger and he was not charged.
His entire, I think it was his jaw or his jaw all the way down to his chin had a huge gash in it.
Oh, really?
And they showed interviews, when they were talking in the Netflix series, you could see the scar.
Oh.
On his face.
Maybe I just didn't pay No.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And Connor's family actually went on to sue the police force and the
Okay.
Murdaughs for conspiring to make him.
Yeah.
There's like a bunch of legal terms I can't really explain how it is, but
Yeah.
conspiring to make him look like the bad guy in
Yeah.
this.
Wow.
Yeah.
As they should,
Yeah.
because it wasn't him. Okay. Paul Murdaugh was charged with 3 felony counts on April 18th, 2019, including boating under the influence, including causing the death of Mallory Beach and seriously injuring 2 other passengers. He pleaded not guilty and was released on bond. On June 7th, 2021, Paul and his mother Maggie were murdered, and the charges against the now deceased Paul were dropped. At the time, his father, Alex Murdaugh, theorized that Paul and Maggie had been killed in relation for the boat accident. Alex Murdaugh was charged with their homicides over 13 months later on July 15th, 2022, and was found guilty.
Yeah, another thing we didn't talk about is that night that Mallory, the boating accident, when they all go to the hospital, Paul's grandfather and Alec were both going down the hallways into each room.
Yeah, room to room.
And talking to the kids saying, hey, don't worry, just keep your mouth shut. We got you guys covered. Hey, by the way, Connor was the driver of the boat, right? They would say no, and they're like, oh, well, we all know Connor was driving the boat.
Yeah.
These two attorneys were trying to persuade these kids into telling everyone that Connor was the driver of the boat, saying that he's going to be all right. He's just going to get a slap on the wrist. Connor was the driver, though.
Insane
Like
behavior.
they just lost their best friend,
Yeah.
girlfriend, daughter,
traumatized,
and you have these fucking pricks walking up and down the hallway telling you what happened when they weren't there.
So crazy.
Because they knew like how to get out of situations like this.
Which is so gross. To use the knowledge that you have based on your position to influence these kids is disgusting.
So after the death of Mallory, things got really heavy on Alec.
Yes.
Like things just started piling up.
Yeah.
Attention, just everything was like people around town knew things were going on.
Oh, he was trying so hard to keep Paul's name out of it that it kind of just really dragged them more into it.
Mixed with other things we're going to talk about, including his drug addiction.
Yeah.
Drug addiction to opiates at that.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the murders of Maggie and Paul. Okay, on June 7th, 2021, and this is when Alex's world just collapses.
Yeah.
You know, the Mallory Beach thing, this is a lot of pressure on his shoulders mounting.
Which, if I'm not wrong, they had just decided on the 4th of June that Paul was going to be charged with those 3 things. And then a couple days later, he ends up murdered. So everybody was speculating that this was the start of Alex, like, grappling to try to get everything to fall into line so that they, you know, because it would have brought his financial stuff into play, because he said that he didn't have the money for the payout for Mallory and the lawsuit. And so with that, it would have opened up all of his financial fraudulent stuff that was going on.
Having an opiate addiction will make you do some wild things, including things to your family. On June 7th, 2021, Alec called police from his cell phone at 10:06 p.m. saying he had discovered the bodies of 22-year-old son Paul and 52-year-old wife Maggie near the dog kennels at the family's hunting lodge located at the 1,772-acre estate in Islandton, South Carolina. Both had been shot multiple times with different weapons. Alec initially claimed that at the time of the killings he had been with his mother, who has dementia. It had also been revealed that Maggie was considering ending her marriage to Alec and had consulted a divorce lawyer in Charleston, South Carolina, several weeks prior to the murders. In October of 2021, it was revealed that South Carolina Law Enforcement Division had regarded Alec as a person of interest in the homicide since the start of the investigation. In July of 2022, Alex Murdaugh was indicted for the murder of his wife Maggie and son Paul. Prosecutors suggested a motive where Murdaugh sought a distraction from his financial crimes, which we were talking about, which were beginning to go public and to garner sympathy. Alec pleaded not guilty. On March 2nd, 2023, Alec was convicted of both murders. The following day, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
2 consecutive life sentences for the murder of his
Wife
son and
and
his
son.
wife.
Yep.
Awful.
And Paul from the grave was able to solve this case.
Yes.
With his cell phone.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it was Snapchat. Was it Snapchat?
Yep. He took he was on FaceTime with somebody who had a dog in the kennel, and you could hear Alec in the background which put him at the scene of the crime when he was saying, I wasn't there. I was asleep on the couch, and then I woke up and I went to visit my mom, and then I found them when I got back.
Yep.
Now we're going to break down what happened after the murder of Maggie and Paul.
A few months after.
Yeah. With Alex assisted suicide fraud, which is super interesting.
Imagine driving down that road and you see him.
And he's the one that called 911.
You know it's bad because someone else called 911 when this happened and said, there's a man on the side of the road covered in blood. It looks like a setup.
Oh. The most craziest thing that he could do. And it didn't even go well. It did not go well for him.
Yeah.
On September 3rd, 2021, Alex resigned from his law firm, Peter, Murdaugh, Parker, Ellsroth, and Diedrich, PMPED for short, after the firm confronted him over suspected embezzlement. According to the New York Times, the amount involved was, quote, in the millions.
I was about to say, he stole millions from these people.
From that point forward, Alex Murdaugh's house of cards began to collapse, and the case became a national sensation, making regular mainstream headlines. The following day, Alex was grazed by a gunshot to the head while changing a tire on a rural road. He claimed a truck slowed down, shot him, and drove away. The injury was superficial, and he was released from the hospital soon after. On September 6th, Alex released a statement saying he was entering a rehabilitation facility in Orlando, Florida for substance abuse treatment. That man was shot in the head, grazed, just ever so lightly grazed on the side of his head by a literal gunshot wound. And he called 911 and was like, oh man, I was just changing my tire on the side of the road and this guy pulled up and he just shot me and then he drove away.
Yeah.
Come on.
Does it say who did it? It does. So, yeah.
On September 14th.
This is the most wild part about it.
Yeah. SLED announced that Alex's former client and distant cousin, Curtis Edward Smith, who had also been Alex's source for an oxycodone addiction, had been arrested for having conspired with Alec to kill him on the roadside shooting. Alex's death would allow his son Buster to receive a $10 million insurance payout. Smith was charged with assisted suicide, aggravated assault and battery, and insurance fraud. Alex, suffering from massive depression and wanting to kill himself, admitted to concocting the assisted suicide as a murder scheme. He claimed he was motivated by a mistaken belief that Buster would not receive the insurance money if Alec committed suicide himself. On November 4th, the Hampton County Grand Jury issued 3 charges against Alex in the assisted suicide scheme. Which is actually, the whole thing is crazy. And just to get a $10 million payout for his
son,
his only living son.
Wild. I can't. The things that drugs do to your fucking brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy cow. It doesn't even, we're not even going to talk. We won't get too much into this, but I don't even think Netflix or anything covered this. Alec was hiring sex workers daily.
Yeah. I did read about that.
This dude is just off his rocker.
Yeah.
At this
whole world is crumbling around him.
They also said that he wasn't ever the best lawyer either. I just realized our lamp was out for some reason.
Yeah.
But he wasn't ever the best lawyer either. So I don't know. This dude was just different, man. Yeah. He was just different.
Yeah. It says Curtis Smith denied the version of events. He said he had nothing to do with the insurance fraud and that he never shot Alex, only pointed the gun toward the sky and fired to scare sense into Alex. Which his whole interview that he did, everybody was like, he's just trying to play the victim and woe is me, don't look at me. It's not about me. And never really owned up to his involvement in it, which I thought was super interesting. But he was also heartbroken because Alex was a longtime friend and he trusted him and, that whole thing too.
On May 24th, 2023, the U.S. Attorney's Office District of South Carolina announced a federal grand jury returned an indictment of 22 counts for money laundering, wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud for a total of $12,425. $12,425,252.54.32.
I mean, that's just
As
such
part
a
of
huge number.
yeah, to the penny.
Come on.
To the penny they had that shit. Like as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors, they chose 22 charges that were most representative of the victims. As part of the plea deal, he was forced to face we've talked about this, but he was to face up to 30 years of federal prison to be served concurrently with the state conviction on the same charges. The plea deal required to be truthful with prosecutors. Days before his sentencing, DOJ prosecutors posted a new court filing saying that Alec had failed a polygraph test, and an additional $1.3 million in stolen money and a further 11 victims were discovered since the plea deal was made. Nevertheless, the plea deal was retained, but with the new victims, the prison sentence was increased.
Oh.
On April 1st, 2024, Murdaugh was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for his financial fraud crimes to run concurrently with previous sentences. 2 life sentences for double murder and 27 years for state financial crimes.
Insane.
And to pay reparations of $8.7 million to the known 25 victims. Which good luck getting that money.
Yeah, for real. Watching him on the stand, 'cause he was on the stand for 2 days. And the whole time they're like, so did you do it? And he was like, I mean, yeah, I can say that I did it and that I did wrong things, but I can't say. And then he would like beat around the bush.
Yeah.
And that was so interesting to watch because they got him like red-handed with so many different things. And he was like, yeah, I can admit that I did bad and wrong things, but I didn't directly sit down with the clients to their faces and, tell them that I was going to give them this and give them that. He was like, half the time they just trusted me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Brother.
I listened to over 2 hours of phone calls between Alec and Buster.
Yeah.
And these phone calls from jail were insane.
Because he was still like bossing people around about money even while he was in there.
While he was in there.
Like,
and like I'm a very good reader of like voice and like situational reading. I'm really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And like Alec talking to Buster is just like, you kind of feel bad for Buster because like his mom and his brother are dead, and deep inside you know that Buster knows that his dad did it.
Absolutely.
Even though his dad proclaims innocence to this day.
Yeah.
And from jail, his dad is constantly asking if Buster can get a hold of their uncle John Marvin for money.
Yeah.
Constantly, because he's saying that he needs it for like food and stuff like that, or gambling or whatever in the thing, but Buster deep down knows it's for his opiate addiction.
I do feel for Buster.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting.
Even though like he's probably a little prick too.
Yeah.
Like,
well, his involvement with the first person that we talked about.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, can you have sympathy? I mean, he was never charged for anything, but it's just like you have to have some sympathy for him because his entire world is gone.
Yeah.
Like,
it's such a tough case.
Wild.
The whole thing is actually mind-blowing, and it's twisted and sickening, and when it comes to Alec, but with everybody else that was
lying,
involved,
House of Cards type.
Yeah.
Like,
just everybody else that was directly affected because of that specific, the 4 people in that family is
I mean,
awful.
Mallory Beach's parents would never get their daughter back.
Yeah.
Because of Paul's alcoholism, because of how he was raised.
Yeah.
Like, Alec let them drink like that on a consistent basis.
Which is...
like, they were getting hammered when they were 13, 14 years old. There's pictures of Paul when he's like 12 and 13 with beer in his hand.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. And like the Satterfields are never going to get their mother back.
Nope.
All of those people that he took money from.
And Netflix really, like, they shed a light on Paul at the end of the series about how good of a person he actually was if you take out the alcoholism.
Yeah.
Like, he was very kind, very sweet, very gentle, very caring. Like, he loved his animals, he loved his family.
Yeah.
If you took out the alcoholism, he was a good person, and that sucks. Yeah. But
it's a sad story.
Yeah. I think that's all we got for today. If you guys haven't watched the Murdaugh Family Murders, I think that's what it's called on Netflix, go watch that. It's super interesting.
Yeah, I did enjoy that.
Zodiac Killer coming next week. Like and subscribe.
Yes.
all the good stuff. See ya.